Two village idiots with a love-hate relationship.
See, you got fat. See, you still look like a 15-year-old girl, but not hot.
Who can't stop arguing over Oklahoma sports.
You know what, man? Why am I still talking to you?
Come on, we were doing good there, man.
It's the Just Okay Sports Podcast.
Sooner Nation, Thunder Nation, we are back. This is the Just Okay Sports Podcast. I'm one of the Village Idiots, Daryl. I'm here with my brother, J-Rod, and we are getting ready to kick this thing off. How are you, man?
Dude, I'm good. It's been a minute since we've done a pod, so feels a little. We're gonna have to knock some rest off. I did like, by the way, our brotherly synchronous head bob as the music played. So I don't know if that's a genetic thing, but we apparently both got that trait. So
just got to get the nervous energy out. So, you know, it is a thing, which by
what
the
are you
way,
nervous about? We should not be nervous about what we're about to talk about, but go ahead.
No. But I am anxious. Anxious is more the word maybe than nervous. Right. So speaking of all that though, this is a very average podcast because we're nervous and anxious and don't know what we're doing. So go ahead and subscribe and like anyway. Go ahead and leave a 5-star review anyway. And one thing that helps us a ton is we do have an online merch store now. You can get your Dylan Gabriel QB1 shirts there. You can get Lincoln Knight shirts there. You can get Just Okay shirts, hats, all that fun stuff there. It is at redbubble.com. You can just go to our Twitter account. It's linked there. Or you just go to redbubble.com and search Just Okay Sports and you will find our stuff. And it would be greatly appreciated. As that is the one and only way that we help support this thing that we do here to try to bring you some decent content and thought on everything Sooners and Thunder talk. So all that to say, it has been a minute and man, it's been 4 weeks since we have exactly done all that stuff.
I think it's been three. I think we did one because I don't remember what it was. Somebody committed, maybe. I don't even remember who it was. It's been we've had such a whirlwind of commitments in July that I don't remember. But I remember we had like a kind of a pop-up pod for that real quick. And that's the last one we've had. By the way, Nemo's already in chat, already gifting subs in chat. So by the way, we do this on Twitch. Anybody that's listening to this, we do this on Twitch. If you guys want to see us do this live and see us stumble all over ourselves in action, then check that out. But
you want to definitely find out that we do not have faces for television. So that's why we are usually more so podcast than on video.
I've definitely, it's the voice. It's not the face, you know? So, but anyway, we've got some, and by the way, since Nemo isn't here real quick, we do have Nemo. The intro is being worked on. We're getting a new intro.
We finally were responded to by our voiceover crew. But Nemo, in the meantime, if you didn't notice, I did edit the old intro for you if you were here for it, to where it would be a nameless intro for tonight, so that way there would be no confusion on who's hosting and doing and being and all those fun things. So yeah,
right.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
Anyway.
And we've got even my boy Pseudo Justin's dropping he's dropping the link to the merch store in chat. So that's pretty awesome. Thanks, my guy.
Thank you.
That's what, we gotta, like, all us Oklahoma fans got to sit together. I got my Oklahoma versus the world shirt on.
Heck yeah.
So because before we get into this, it's kind of funny because really before the last time we potted, whenever like the momentum really started to just shift.
Yes.
And before that, everybody was like, oh my God, what are we going to do? Like, we're so far behind and like, we're never going to be able, people were already, there was a lot of people I saw on Twitter, like hitting the panic button. And, and of course you and I and Troy were all like, guys, let's just chill out. It's the beginning of July, end of June or whatever. And, but man, holy crap. Talk about a complete whirlwind of a month for recruiting.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's just jump right into it. Let's kick off with recruiting. We have called it Christmas in July within our rundown for the Sooners. It was an incredible run. At the end, actually, we'll just go ahead and say as of August 1st, okay, with the latest commitment that we'll get into in a minute, OU has now vaulted themselves from the 40s in June to the 6th ranked class on 247, the 7th ranked class on Rivals, the 7th ranked class on On3. For whatever reason, my ESPN Plus account still does not want to work on ESPN, so I could not see what our team ranking was on there. Thank you, ESPN. So all that to say,
ESPN's rankings are not what they used to be. It used to be the go-to, and anymore, it's not. It's, I don't know how they do their rankings, but so yeah, we're not missing much, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, all that to say. So in the month of July itself, there were 9 commitments, and really 10 if you include August 1st, which had Colton Vasic, commit on August 1st. So again, we talked about this time and time again. The timeline was going to look different, and I know this has been talked about ad nauseum by several other podcasts and all things, but patience was going to be the virtue. They were going to extend this out a little bit more. They were going to make it a little bit longer, and boom, here we are, cleaning house through the month of July.
Well, I mean, and even if you watch Brent when he did his presser, I mean, basically he said there was guys that we had to be no, we're going to wait until you're more certain or you're in a better position to decide. I mean, they were turning away commitments, it sounds like, up until July, basically. Which it makes the perfect sense for them to kind of flip it and start trying to let guys commit, because it's they're getting geared up for fall camp. They don't want to be distracted on having to recruit their butts off because they're so far behind, right? And the guys know this, like I said, he's sold them hey, if you're going to come here, you're going to commit. You're not going on any more visits. If you're committed here, you're an Oklahoma Sooner. You're not an Oklahoma Sooner to be. You already are an Oklahoma Sooner. So you're not going to go visit Florida. You're not going to go visit Notre Dame or whatever. You're going to be a Sooner. And they know that. It's clear and up front. There's none of this, with Tebow, there was a whole lot of it seemed like wishy-washiness with that, and how they would react to that would differ between players. And it's I blanket. You commit, you're done.
Yeah. And again, I don't know that any one way is right or wrong, but I understand why he goes about it that way. I understand why he approaches it. And again, it is for everybody, including myself. I was one of the ones early on that said, I don't know how that will play in today's recruiting, but it's played very well, and it's worked out just fine, and it's been good. And speaking of working out really well, the other thing that has been really cool to see through this month of July, you and I both were, I don't want to put words in your mouth, so you can correct me on this if I'm wrong, but I would say both of us were very shocked and also kind of not happy when we found out the reality that Jamar Cain would not be retained as a part of the staff, and that this grad assistant off-field analyst guy was going to be coming in and being the lead recruiter and position coach for our defensive ends. I would say after the month of July, we're good. I think it's fair to say we're good.
Well, okay. Yeah. I mean, let me put it this way. I feel a whole lot more comfortable with him. I mean, it's one thing to recruit your butt off, right? And it's another thing to put a good product out on the field. So, but I mean, from all intents and purposes, at the same time though, part of me, even when we said that, we were Brent knows what he's doing. Brent's a defensive guru, right? Yeah. So if he thinks guy can coach, he didn't bring Chavis because, he can recruit, but he just can't coach. I think for Venables, coaching is way more paramount than recruiting is.
You're right.
And so, yeah, I mean, he's just absolutely knocked it out of the park. And it's funny because the guys that he's landed have just talk him up and down, as much as they did Jamar Cain. Not, and all due respect to Cain, I still think he's a great coach, and I wish there was some way that he could have stayed at Oklahoma in some capacity, because he seems so invested in the program. He didn't go to USC, said he wanted to stay. I mean, he wasn't one of the ones that just got on the plane and flew over, right? So, so we wish him the best, but yeah, I mean, Chavis is just killing it right now.
Yeah, I mean, again, just to put it back into perspective, Colton Vasic is top 12 at his position, right? A kid that was a Texas legacy who grew up in Austin and went to Austin.
Two generations before him were Texas legacy,
right? So
he went to Lake Travis,
right? Westlake. Austin
Westlake. Sorry, yeah,
Westlake.
Westlake. Yeah.
So to pull that kid out of Austin, huge. And then you've got Adebore, who is a top 50 player in the entire nation and number 7 at his position. Like that's 2 top 120, top 130 kind of guys that you just landed at your position when you've never officially coached a down. So from the recruiting perspective, he's great. From some of the videos and things they've shown, it feels very good, what you see there. But again, we'll see what happens with the product on the field. And on the recruiting note, I forgot to mention, he still has a Kana as well, who's another like top 150 guy that's going to get added into the mix potentially. So all that to say, concerns about Miguel Chavis are gone. And the other thing that makes me comfortable from the coaching aspect is he does have Todd Bates right there, right? And they kind of lean on each other, but he's kind of got somebody that understands everything on that D line well to kind of look over him and make sure that he's pushing things the right way. And then the last thing that matters is what the players say about him. And dude, the players love Miguel Chavis.
And I was going to say, look, what I think is interesting, and not to say I don't want to frame this in a way of me saying the staff before didn't get along with each other, but it's like this staff really like the Chavis and who was it? Bates, yeah, Bates were. But the video out on Twitter, like,
the
was
salt
it
and
yesterday?
pepper video, and yeah, and
it's like they're always like all the coaches are always doing stuff together. You know, they're always interacting with each other, and it's on and off the practice field, right? Like it's outside of football sort of things. So there's like a tightness, I think, with the staff, which I think is one of those things that like really permeates through into that whole family, because like everything, like their kids even more so now are saying like we love Oklahoma because it's like a family atmosphere,
right?
And it's like, you know, that's how I feel like they've kind of built it, and like everybody, like, because it's Vlai, Levy, I mean, pretty much everybody on staff, like if you go down the list, is like every player has said like that's my dude. You know what I mean? Like it's such a different. Not to say they didn't say some of that stuff before about certain coaches, but it was like you could tell. You know, you had like Kane and blah blah. Like you could tell who was related, like who was liked and who wasn't, kind of thing. And this one, it's like I don't know that I could tell you somebody that isn't liked. You know, so it's just a whole different culture and vibe right now in the program.
Yeah, and I mean, we're going to circle back around to that. So don't let me forget to circle back to that thought of kind of because I do want to be very clear. I mean, we had a father of a recruit on here, a preferred walk-on recruit for that matter. And if you remember, he talked about how Riley's staff really was fairly relational for the most part, and they were engaging in that way. But there is a subtle difference, and I do want to get to that in a minute. But before we get to that, let's talk about what's still on potentially the menu for Oklahoma moving forward. So you're sitting at class number 6, number 7. The composite says it's the 6th ranked class, right, on 247. Now, it sounds like it's all but done for Makari Vickers, who, by the way, is number 6 at his position and 82 overall. Sounds like it's a done deal for Jordan Renaud, who is the 8th at his position and 86 overall, that's a defensive tackle, by the way. Jacob Johnson, who is an Oklahoma product and OK Prep, is 10th at his position and 126th overall. You've got Anthony Evans, who is 44 at his position, 337 overall. Yates, who is 26 at his position, 280 overall. Malachi Coleman, there's starting to be some steam and some smoke with this one. 7th at his position, 99th overall. Peyton Bowen, who is committed to Notre Dame, but there's a lot of smoke that could be undone and that Oklahoma's really working to get him here. Also a teammate, by the way, of Jackson Arnold, 5th at his position, 47th ranked overall. And then lastly, of course, the one that everybody knows about, David, a.k.a. DJ Hicks, the number 1 defensive tackle in the class, number 7 overall. Jared, if they close on every single one of these guys, you are going to have 10 of the top 100 players in the class coming to Oklahoma, which is unreal.
Well, yeah, and to be clear, I don't know that they're going to close on all of these guys, right? Like some of them are a little bit of a reach. But it's like, if I remember right, and correct me if I'm wrong, Hicks came and visited last weekend, I think it was.
Yes, he came to the party on the Palace.
And he was supposed to go, there was rumors that he was supposed to leave and go to A&M for their big pool party or whatever they're having.
That was the report, is that he was going there, yes.
But he stayed in Norman.
Correct.
So that's huge because, like, I mean, whatever you want to think about A&M, it's like they're recruiting their butts off right now. So to not go and at least hear that pitch, is huge. But yeah, like, I mean, I would say, you listed 8 guys out. I would probably say there's 4 to 5 that I feel feel confident enough, like, that I would bet on it. You know what I mean? Like,
well, let's be clear. We know for certain there's a rumor that there's 6, but we know for certain the staff did their, now it's not eyeball emojis, it's the locks. There are 5. One of them was Colton Vasek, which means there's 4 left. So 4 on this list are in, which I would say Makari Vickers, Jordan Renaud, and Jacob Johnson. Those are done deals. And my guess is that it's Anthony Evans. Those top 4 that we listed, that's everything I'm hearing. It's going that way. Now, Yates is a high potential within that list. The 6th rumor of the lock is that it's David Hicks.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know if that's true or not. I cannot confirm that. I'm just saying.
Well, and I was going to say there was so much momentum in that, with him coming out of obviously the visit. I mean, he spoke glowingly of it. I mean, you can tell he just had fun. And like I said, the fact that he stayed in Norman was indicative of something, right? Like you don't just not go visit a school like A&M.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, like I said, they could land all 8. Like, don't take it as I'm selling it as saying they're not going to land all 8. They could land all 8. I have no idea. Like, the way that they're recruiting right now, who knows? And Bowen, I feel like Bowen I actually think he's more of a lean than people realize. I'm not saying that he's like a lock by any measure, but I do think he's probably like 60-40 right now, OU's way.
Yeah, see, I think you and I are on opposite ends of that one. I keep hearing that, but I just keep thinking, dude, this guy has visited OU now like 6 times since he committed to Notre Dame. If he was going to decommit and pull that trigger, it seems like that would have happened by now. It feels like he's trying to find a reason to go to OU, but he's just not there yet. So I would flip-flop that and say more it's like 40%, right? But look, even if you miss on Bowen, 4 of these 8 coming into the class is unbelievable. I mean, again, that's still going to put you at what? It's still going to put you at 6 in the top 100. I feel really good about Hicks. I think the OU leads for Hicks right now. That's 7, right? And then if you can land Coleman, that's 8. I mean, dude, it's
yeah. I mean, and it's, again, to go back to it, it's the momentum that's built up, right? Like they've slowly gathered that momentum and pushed forward with some of these guys. Like, and I think that's kind of what you're going to see with his recruiting style, right? Because you got to realize some of these kids do want to play with each other. Like, they build friendships and they build bonds, and let's just say Bowen wants to play, he wants to play with, whoever. Let's say he's got along with, doesn't even have to be anybody in your position group, but let's just say he gets along with Evans, all right, or whoever. It's like, he wants to play with him. It's like when he commits, then it's like, okay, that kind of turns the knob for him. And by the way, yeah, people are saying that your audio is cutting out a little bit. So
dang, I don't know why that is the case. I will continue to try to work on that.
I think you may just be sitting a little far away, because now it sounds good.
Well, there we go. I'll stay up and a little bit tighter.
Yeah, but yeah, I mean, it's going to be. I think Hicks. I feel like Hicks could be one of the locks, to be honest. Not confident on that. Like, I'm not, willing to put money on that, but I do feel like he's probably one of them.
Yeah, I mean, again, I think if Hicks is a lock, he's that 6th one that's in the blur, right? Because here's what I forgot. This is what I was wanting to circle back around to about Party on the Palace. Now, again, I want to be very clear. I'm not reporting this. I'm stealing this from Brandon Drum and Parker Thune's podcast. And this is what they said on their podcast and reported on their podcast that I thought was really cool. A part of the Party on the Palace was the guys that they invited there, they had sit around and then stand up and introduce themselves to everybody in the room, right? Here's who I am, where I'm from, and I don't kind of know, it was some kind of one of those, give us something about yourself, or whatever. But Brandon Drum said that he was told that one of the best and most emotional moments of the night was David Hicks introducing himself, talking about his life, and saying, I will tell you this, I am here and I have chosen to be here and to be a part of this weekend because I know that these coaches care about me. And that means a lot to me. Now, that's where I wanted to circle back to that Lincoln Riley thing. Lincoln Riley didn't treat on a relational standpoint on visits 5 stars different than 2 stars, right? You heard people talk about building good bonds with him, that they were constantly in contact, those kinds of things. But there is a depth and a genuineness to the things you're hearing from these recruits when you do talk to them about it all, about there being a genuine care, right? Even who was it? Ethan Downs talking about how Miguel Chavis, once a month or so, like multiple times, he didn't give a time frame, but he said multiple times Miguel Chavis comes to us and says, I'm sorry, I'm not loving you guys the way that I'm supposed to as your coach. I'm pushing you hard, but I'm not loving you the way that I'm supposed to love you. Like, that's the kind of stuff that's different. There's a real true relationship. And again, I don't think that BV ever said this to take a shot. I just think that transactional versus relational is a real deal. So it's just an interesting thing.
Yeah. And it does seem like a little kind of like a little bit of a nuanced difference, right? And it's hard to put into to phrase it, but it's like, you can tell that these coaches care about the players. That everybody is given a glowing report. Not to say, again, Lincoln's staff did the same thing. But at the same time, it is, I think what it is there's a clear cut selling point, right? Where with Lincoln, it was like, you can come here, like now it would be like, you can come here and we're going to get you a bunch of NIL money and, we'll try to get you to the league or whatever. Right. Like that's his thing or whatever.
Right.
But, I think with BV, he's like, look, we're gonna try to develop you to the best player you can. There's gonna be a good opportunity to make some NIL money, but we want you to go make more money in the league or make more money in your career after football. Life is bigger than football. All the things that he says, you can tell is what his recruiting pitch is to these kids, and it's just that to me is also the methodology, I guess, of how he's selling things is also another big difference, like you said, to the transactional versus relational thing.
Yeah.
So.
No doubt. So to come back to recruiting a little bit, we got a question sent in to us from the Discord from our man Nemo, who is also in chat. And his question was this. You might clarify this for me, but he said he wants to know if you could get anyone back on defense to play under BV, who would it be? And I took that to mean from last year, but he may have meant through all the non-BV years, but I'm just going to go to last year. So from last year's squad, everybody that's gone graduate and draft, who would you have back to play under BV?
It's a tough choice because there's a lot of guys that left that I felt like still have untapped potential. For last year, I would say probably Perion. Just because I think if you, I know that Perion had some, some motor questions, right?
Right.
Some questions about how much his motor was on every play. But at the exact same time, it's like, dude, the dude, if he was left to eat, if he was left to really go after somebody, which is what BV is going to do, dude, he was such a beast. So I would love to see him. And, and he was one of the first ones that came out and said, look, I've been here a day since BV got here, and I already know that he's the dude.
Yeah.
So
yeah, that's true. I thought about him, but then I had to change it up because one of the things that BV is known for is his blitzing. And to think about Nick Benito in Brent Venable's blitz packages and not probably being asked to spy, 30% of the time against a mobile quarterback. Oh my Lord. What could Nick Benito's sack numbers been with BV? Right? Just an unbelievable number.
Yeah, it's absolutely insane to think about some of those guys. Like I said, and BV is just, it almost makes you foam at the mouth because it's like, dude, if he had some of those guys, it's like he's already got a proven track record of going through and developing guys to be outstanding athletes in college and in the NFL. And he said, I meant through the Lincoln years, but not mad how y'all interpreted it. Because I was thinking of, he said he thought of K9. Like,
oh Lord, yes.
Yeah. K9 would have been a beast.
Jordan Evans. Can you imagine Jordan Evans with BV coaching him? Stephen Parker, with a Brent Venables staff. What does that come out and look like?
It's so funny to me because you look back and I started thinking about it. It's like, you had like Travis Lewis and Tony Jefferson, and BV's had a track record of having those guys that are just dogs. And so I'm really going to see who's going to rise, because I know that he's going to have a lot of pressure on the guys, in the sense that he's going to make them succeed. But they're going to have to work for it, right? I mean, that's been his motto. And so, it's definitely going to be a good experience for them. Like I said, I think, K9 would be a good one. And like you said, Stephen Parker and some of those guys.
Oh gosh.
Yeah. Would have been phenomenal. But I mean, as far as last year though, for me, it's Perry On, but it's not by much over, like you said, Nick Medino, because Medino was otherworldly when they did let him play.
Boy,
he should have been played.
That dude off the edge was nasty in college. So
yeah.
Tell you what's not nasty is that players are able now to make money off of their name, image, and likeness. And so I thought it would be worth noting, just here in case you are not aware, there are multiple ways for you as a fan of Oklahoma to be involved in a healthy and a good way within NIL. Okay. So I think one of the cool things that is happening at a bunch of different places, not just Oklahoma, is they are trying to create pathways for the common fan to be a part of the process of helping these kids, right? For what they do and how they sacrifice. And so, number one that I will mention, and what I mean by that is, rather than a collective, right? The collectives are these billionaires, millionaires throwing tons of money in and basically paying kids to play, right? There are other platforms that are now being created with a subscription fee that you pay, and you get access to either a podcast or video interview. You get to do some live chats, things like that, where it's truly them doing some form of service and making money off of that. And these groups and these clubs are hoping they've picked the right guys to make that money, right? If that makes any sense. And so the number one that I will mention is called Strengthening Oklahoma. This is the CEOs, if you will, of this organization are Gabe Eichert and Dusty Dvoracek. And again, if you listen to Oklahoma Breakdowns podcast, they've talked about, Gabe has a lot about the process of creating something that would get past the smell test from a tax standpoint, from a legal standpoint, from an NCAA standpoint. They have put a lot of work into it. And look, it goes from anywhere from I think it's like $10 or $15 all the way up to like $75 a month, right? And they've got 13 guys that you get exclusive content with. Okay. Right. So that's how that one works, right? So
and it's kind of funny because some of the things they're doing is ripped right out of the streamer content creator playbook of how they're doing it, which is, I mean, it's a good model. I mean, people make, obviously there's content creators out there that make millions of dollars a year, so right, and these people have a platform, I mean, already. So and it's crazy because some of them, the goals really aren't that almost to me seem low. Because and I know you're about to talk about it, but the Norman NIL club, I think their goal was only $50,000, and I was like, I mean, that seems like a lot, but then when you think about the fan base that OU has, it's if 50, I almost don't think it would be that hard for 50,000 people to donate $1,
right?
Right. If they really started trying to push that, and it's really a great model, and it's a great thing that they're doing. Because like you said, it's something that's going to give these kids, I think this is honestly kind of the model that's going to end up being the long-term working thing for the NCAA as a whole, because it's look, you're going to give these kids enough money that they're going to be able to live a good lifestyle, right? They're not going to be broke. They're going to be fine. They can probably have a nice car, live in a nice house or whatever while they're in college, but it's not life-changing money. They're not going to be able to go drive around in, Lambos and all that. But at the same time, it's giving them a way, in that way, it teaches them to be financially responsible still, right? If you're making $100,000 as a college student, like, yes, you're going to be well off, but it's like, you can't go spend your money every day just willy nilly on whatever you want, right? Like $100,000 has its limits on what it can do in today's world. So it's things like that, I think, that are going to, that's why I think over the course of the next, I don't know, 4 to 5 years or however long, I think that's where you're going to see schools that aren't doing this sort of model are going to have to start transitioning to that model because, and we'll get into this later when we talk about some other schools, but it's interesting to see how that's going to affect.
Yeah. And yeah. So, I mean, again, I love the way that they're going about it. The second organization that's really made a big plug, you've seen a ton of players talking about it. It's called the Norman NIL Club. And this is a national thing, right? Because there's an Austin NIL club. There's a College Station NIL club. So somebody got smart and went and sold this to everybody. And again, same thing. There's different tiers. Matter of fact, this one, the minimum is $5, and then you can pay whatever you want monthly. So you set the terms of your membership with Norman NIL Club. It's just, it has to be a minimum of $5, right? And they've been putting up how much they've gotten pledged, all that. Now, my understanding though is like the other day I saw it was like 25,000. I think that's monthly. I think that they're bringing in 25,000 monthly, and I can't remember how many guys are on that. I don't know if that's the whole roster or a certain select few. But again, so Strengthening Oklahoma is one, Norman NIL Club is one, and then the other one that I've seen a lot around and guys being a part of is one called Boom Crew. Again, all very much the same, monthly subscription. You get tons of access. You get to send in questions. Some of them come with merch once you sign up. Some of them come with drawings. Some of them come with events. So you need to go look. But these three seem to be the most legit. They seem to be the best ones. And so definitely check these out. Again, you don't have to be a millionaire to be involved in NIL. Buy jerseys, buy the merch they're selling, sign up for one of these. Put $5 in a month. Don't do that deal and help out with all that kind of stuff. But again, just wanted to throw that out there that now we're finally starting to see the positive of NIL. And so let's push that forward, right? We all don't like the pay for play stuff, right? Like that still kind of sits, I think, weird with some of us. Some of us don't care. But if that's the case, then you have to support the things that are genuinely NIL to weed that other stuff out. You can't just sit around and complain about it. You got to be a part of it.
Well, and here's the, like, to me, I get some of that argument, like the pay to play and all that or whatever, or just, buying players like it's, whatever. But at the same time, it's like, look, the schools have been benefiting, like, let's be honest, the schools and the conferences have been benefiting off of the name, image, and likeness of the players for decades, for a century or whatever. And so finally now the players are kind of wrestling that back into their control. It's like, I don't know that you can make too much of an argument against that, like without saying that there should be some form of it, right? Like they should be able to profit off their own name, image, likeness. If the school's going to, then why can't they? Right. So, but yeah, I mean, it's definitely it's a cool thing. Like I said, I think it's a good thing. And I think, like I said, things like what OU's doing, and not to say OU's the only one doing this, but obviously we're an OU podcast, but I think schools like that are the ones that are going to, in the long term, succeed. Like I said, because I think it's just it's a more viable long term solution instead of everybody saying, "Oh my God, I can like." It's kind of one of those deals like you open the floodgates, right?
Yeah.
Everybody's been wanting to be able to say like, "Oh, I gave," even the rich guys, like I want to say I gave $100,000 to Bijan Robinson or whatever, just so he would show up at my kid's birthday party or whatever it is, and. It's like, but that's going to all cool off. Like people are going to start saying like, oh, I'd just rather, give $50 a month or whatever, like I don't want, I mean, that's what it's going to be.
Yeah.
And so it's just going to be, I think that's how it's going to be going forward, but that's just my opinion. And also, by the way, Swayze says, I think the conferences should establish a fund for players out of their media proceeds equal across the board for parity, of course.
And that's not a bad idea.
I mean, that's kind of what the NFL does, right? With their deal. Of course, they have like a minimum, like you have to be in the league for 5 years or something like that to get your pension or whatever.
Yeah, it is something like that. But I mean, I think eventually that's what I mean. Even Gabe Eichers talked about just some of the way the law stuff's working. In order for them to regulate some different things, they're going to have to go to a much more away from a college student athlete to employee. And that's going to get interesting when and if that does ever happen. But yeah, I agree with you. I think the other thing that guys are trying to do with NIL, right, is what we've seen at Texas for the last 15 years. They're trying to use their money to have influence over the organization, right? They're trying to use their money to give themselves a voice into who gets recruited and who doesn't. And the schools that don't put up with that crap in the long term, I think things like strengthening Oklahoma, Norman, and those kind of platforms are going to be more the standard. And so we need to be a part of it. So, but the other thing that the standard was being talked about at was Sooner media availability, which was yesterday. It was a 4-hour marathon. I mean, it was crazy. They started at 8. They ended around noon. Jeff Levy talked with the media. I mean, all the coaching staff, but the main things that were broadcast live was Levy, Roof, Venables, and I think Dylan Gabriel. There are platforms that you can go see everybody, all the players and all that kind of stuff. And so there was all that stuff. Jared, did you get a chance to watch any of that stuff or any of those press conferences and things?
I didn't get to watch the full 4 hours. But yeah, I did get to see, and I got to see some like the highlight videos that were put out and stuff like that. One negative thing is like, dude, I'm gonna be real honest. If Barry Trammell was not allowed to ask questions, I would be the happiest person in the world, I think.
What did he ask that bothered you?
Just everything. I can't even remember. Like there was one that he asked, what was it? I think he asked Ted Roof. He was like, who do you think's better, the offense, the defense right now or whatever? And it's like what? Shut up. Like, I mean, I don't know, it's such a dumb question. And it's framed so like, the problem I have with him is he frames his questions to where if somebody gives an answer, like he can use it against them either way. Right. So it's like if he was like, oh no, the offense is better. It's like, well, Ted Roof says it's going to be Ted Roof said that the defense wasn't any good or, vice versa. Right.
Yeah.
It's just things like that.
I do remember he did ask one too. That was, how does this roster stack up to what you had at Clemson?
Yeah. Yeah. That
was one of them, which though, I mean, I get what he's asking, right? I mean, like it is something that if we could put a truth serum in the coaching staff, we'd like to go, okay, you guys played for championships. Are we there? You want to know that, but it's still they're not going to answer that. They're not going to give you that.
It's a trap question, right?
Yes.
It's him trying to get them to pull the Tom Herman and say, I just haven't got my guys here yet or whatever, or whatever it was that his quote was.
Yeah.
So, and that's just not what the staff is going to do. I think the staff is, and the thing is like, people need to understand, like, yes, they recruited some of the players that are on this roster. However, most of this is like, they're having to do with what they got, right? Like they didn't have a whole lot of runway to figure out what to do when all the chaos broke down. Right. So, not to diminish the players on this team or diminish this roster and say that it's not any good. It's good. But I just think, I think that's a more valid question in another season or two. Once he's had a couple of recruiting classes, there is a more of a legitimate question to ask there than, well, what's it like? Because it's like right now, it's like he hasn't had a chance to build his stuff from the ground up. He's making lemonade with lemons kind of thing as much as he can. So not to like I said, not to try to. That sounds like I'm bagging on the roster, but that's not the case.
You are. There's no doubt. So Sooner football players that are listening, it is J-Rod that says you guys are all trash, and that Beanbo and BV's just got to find a way to survive with you guys there. I think you guys are plenty talented to do it all.
I do too. Just my brother's a jerk. But yeah, I know. I think they are. I do think they are. But that's kind of the interesting thing, and I think we're gonna get into this in a little bit because, but yeah, like the like I said, when you watch the interviews, though, it's like the guys that you watched up there, from Ted Roof to BV to Levy to whoever, it's like they all had this positive. Like it was so interesting to hear them speak in a way that was positive to not only their position groups or their specialty, right? Like, Ted Roof was like, this offense is really good. And, I mean, he said a few times like how, practicing against like Dylan Gabriel. I think at one point he said like practicing against Dylan Gabriel was a big help. And, things like that. Like they kind of, and Levy did the same thing. He's like, so-and-so is a terror or whatever, I mean, it's definitely a lot more. There's not any sort of contention between them as far as like offense versus defense or, whatever. So it's pretty interesting to see, but I do think that there's this just coaching staff I think it could end up being one of the best in the country if they can keep doing what they're doing.
Yeah. Hold together. I definitely want to say coming out of the media day, I think, there wasn't like a theme per se that just evaded, throughout that was like, ooh, right. Like this is a problem or this is a strength. But I will say this, I definitely think based on some other things I've heard, but what you heard in those interviews, David Agwebu, I think, has asserted himself as maybe the go-to linebacker out of this crew, which is pretty crazy to think about, right? Because you got Deshaun White, who's kind of the fatherly figure in that room, along with TD Roof, who happens to be Coach Roof's son.
Right.
You've got Danny Stutzman, of course, who is a fan favorite and everybody wants to see on the field. You got your guy, Kip Lewis, who you love and think is great. You got Kobe McKenzie, but somebody even mentioned when the Butkus award list came out and it was Agwebu who was on the list out of that room. First of all, I didn't really expect any of our linebackers to make the list. 1, 2, the fact that it was him and not some of those other guys shocked me a little bit, right? Because the guys that are supposedly all the insiders, your Scoops and all those people, the conversation all through spring was, when does Agwebu get moved to defensive end, right? Like that kept coming up time and time and time again. Now you're hearing Ted Roof say he lost like 20 pounds, that he is really coming along mentally, his work ethic, the way he wants to be great. Agwebu talked about that in his breakout, changing his diet, not eating this and doing this, which, by the way, losing 20 pounds, he said he was right now at 241, which means at some point between whenever things took off and the end of season, he was hovering around 260. So to think about a 235 to 240 pound Agwebu is terrifying to think about that speed moving around. But that was really exciting for me to hear, and it will be interesting to see how it plays out.
And I think it's interesting because Agwebu was one of the guys that the previous staff raved about, right?
Yes.
And even I remember even Teddy Lehman said, like that dude, he's got it. Teddy is a big fan of him, and if I'm going to take an evaluation from any former player on linebackers, Teddy Lehman's going to be probably at the top of that list. And so that was what kind of struck me as weird, and I think it's just one of those things that, like you said, honestly, right now I feel like we have a lot of like guys that have really high ceilings in that linebacker room.
Yep.
And a lot of guys that are still pretty raw, it seems. Right. Like I said, Kip Lewis, or you can go Stutzman or whatever. Like a lot of these guys, it's been so much of a something that they're just having to grow into still, and especially now, like you said, with Schmitty changing their bodies.
Yeah.
Like you said, Agwebu has gained. Or has lost some weight, and other guys have gained weight. I think Redmond is up to what is it? Well, I think I saw two something.
2 something. I would hope so. Playing, I would hope at playing D line.
Hang on. Over 200. I'm trying. Well, I know. Let me look it up. I think they said he was at
I think he's hovering 290 or something.
Yeah, I think he was right. He was almost 300. I think is what they said.
We'll find out. I mean, I think tomorrow is weigh-ins, and so I think they'll have some kind of release on all that stuff tomorrow, but to be official. But I do know that Redmond talked about in his breakout about he finally feels comfortable at his weight and feels comfortable playing that position. And I didn't even realize, I didn't remember anyway, I guess, Redmond was actually recruited to play the oboe position.
Yeah.
That's what they originally recruited him as. So for him to move inside and gain all the weight and stuff was different. So that was interesting. The other weight thing that I thought came out of the day, that for all the people that are going to want to clown on me now, Bill Bedenbaugh is a very happy guy. He is a very happy guy. Mentioned time and time again in his interview how the linemen's bodies look different and how Jerry Schmidt has worked them in a different way. Their strength is different, their mentality. And I thought some of the things he said, me, and he goes, I worked with Jerry for 5 years before he left. And he said, I know how he works these guys from a mental standpoint. And he and I are on the exact same page of how we want that to go. And then he was trying to be very careful to be like, I'm not taking a shot at the old staff. I'm just saying. And I'm like, no. You're taking a shot at the old staff.
Yeah.
It's okay.
It definitely felt like, I mean, before Tebow left, it still felt like there was this contention between Wiley and Bedenbaugh, right? Like it felt like their relationship was more strained than pretty much anybody else's on the staff, in my opinion, just on the outside looking in. Nobody, Bedenbaugh didn't come out and say, I hate Wiley or whatever, vice versa. It just, you could kind of feel that, I think. And then you also had like Rahm. I mean, Rahm basically echoed the same thing. I mean, I saw the clip. He said, like, he goes, dude, we have guys that are stronger now in 6 months than they were in 2 years under Wiley. And he straight up said under Wiley.
Yeah.
Like, he's, and like I said, and it's guys like Rahm that I think could really elevate themselves to another level if they just get some strength and, they bulk up, because like Rahm's got it. That's the thing, is Rahm's got it. He just needs physically, he's got to be able to do it. And last year, he clearly wasn't, right? I know obviously he was injured for part of that, but it's just, it is Schmitty. The Schmitty effect is going to be incredible. So I'm pretty excited to see, because it's like, again, the trenches, your linebackers, your safety. I mean, it's like literally when you start going down the list, it's like, dude, every position group is going to benefit.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, that's the beauty of Schmitty's stuff, is it's like, if you're a receiver or you're going to benefit as much as an offensive tackle. So,
sure.
But yeah, I'm excited. And I think, I don't know how good. I know people have been like, oh, Joe Moore Award. And I'm like, I don't know about Joe Moore Award. I think this offensive line is going to be much improved personally. Yeah. But
like I said before, I want Bill Bedenbaugh to work out. It's obvious that he loves it here, especially in the transition, the way he handled all that. But also, y'all all know I've been very critical of him the last 2 seasons in the line play. Now this year, there's no more excuses. And especially for Levy, who wants to run the football and wants to be physical and impose his will, we're going to find out. Like, we're going to find out what's the issue on that offensive line job. And I am definitely starting to very much come around to the Schmitty end and own my sins of criticizing Bill Bedenbaugh. So we'll see how that all goes. So that was media days. Camp opens Friday, baby. It's go time. What are you looking for out of fall camp overall, Jared, as we enter into that time and that season? What do you think you want to see the most coming out of fall camp outside of no injuries?
Well, yeah. I mean, no injuries, clearly. I don't know. I mean, it's kind of the interesting thing. And that's why I think, here's where I'm going to go dark J-Rod for just a sec. This team has the potential to make it to the playoffs, and it has the potential to be a 6-6 team.
Wow.
Just based on, I think they'll be better than 6-6, but that's kind of my floor for them. But they've got a long, it's been a long off season for them, obviously, with all the turmoil and people leaving, I mean, regardless of what you think of Caleb Williams or Mario Williams now, it's like, those were 2 of your best players on your roster last season. I mean, there's not another way to slice that. And obviously you have guys that have filled in, you've got Dylan Gabriel, but it's like, again, we've talked about that. It's not the same. So, but I think the thing I'm going to look for is probably, I really want to know how physical the practices get reported to be. Like, when we start hearing the players talk about how physical they are, because under Lincoln, that was kind of something that we heard was like, it was very like the guys weren't hitting each other until they got into the first game of the season. right? Like that was the first real meaningful contact that they had all season. And I'm not saying that you guys need to have guys pile driving each other in the first week of fall camp, but BV's not. I don't think is going to be a guy that's going to be like, oh, like just graze him and then he'll go down. It's 2 below. Like he's going to have guys wrapping up and tackling. We shouldn't see or hear like oh, it was we had we had a good cardio day. It's going to be a rough, tough. We got physical today. So I think that's kind of just the overarching physicality is what I really want to see.
Nice. Man, I've thought about this a lot, and I'm just not. I think I would say the two biggest things, and we'll get more into this as we start breaking down position groups, which we're about to do a little bit. But I just want to hear names really rise to the top for both safety and for offensive line. I want to hear names early that maintain throughout camp, rising above everybody else on the offensive line and at safety. And I think we have some ideas at safety, but I think we all have to also be honest and just say that safety is still a big question mark. Whereas corner, I think is a different deal. But again, we'll break that down later on. Well,
and like you said, offensive line too is another one that's going to be. There's a lot of guys that have the potential to jump into that starting lineup.
Yeah. And then, I think the other thing that will be interesting to see if we find out or not is how both sides are doing mentally with the schemes. Are we hearing about tons of busts, or are we hearing that they're fairly fluid and understanding what's going on, and I think with having 2 new systems, that's a big marker.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's going to be it's a different system, altogether. So it's going to be, obviously, I think this is going to be. I think this coaching staff, I wouldn't say is going to have them better coached necessarily, but I think they're going to have them more prepared. What do you?
I don't. What's the difference between better coached and better prepared? I guess.
I don't know. Maybe I should just say they're better coached, but I think, my point being is I think, especially at the beginning of the season, right? When you're in the beginning of the season under Lincoln, how many times did you have guys that had no idea what to do? It felt like the first 4 games you had guys that were trying to learn the playbook. And it wasn't just like a 1 or 2 bad apple kind of thing. It was like, dude, you had people all across the board. You had offensive linemen that didn't know who to block, and so forth and so on. I think that you're not going to see that under a BV system. Like the first game is always going to be a warm up, right? Like I get that, but it's like I don't think you're going to have guys that are going to be standing at the sideline going, I don't know what to do,
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. So with us being 4 weeks away from the start of season, we thought that we would kind of slowly but surely start to work through some position groups as well, and just kind of give our thoughts on what we're looking for, what we think could happen in those spots. And so again, we're just going to walk through a couple tonight, make our way through. So Nemo asked, by the way, in the Discord, who we thought was going to emerge as the starting corners was his question. So Nemo, I'm sorry, we're not going to answer that tonight. Because that's going to be on next week's lineup. So next week we will get into the corners. I really do want to get through a week of camp, at least maybe even 2 before we go to corners, because I think there really is a huge battle there, and I'd love to know kind of what's happening there. So Jared, linebacker, let's start there. BV's bread and butter. Who do you think are going to be the players that are going to rise above in that room and that are going to really have impacts, or that you're just looking to see if they have an impact this year?
I'm going to go with, obviously Guebu is how you're going to have to start, because that's just the name we've heard from several people on the staff. So I definitely think you're going to have to look at him to be probably the leader too. He's also the elder statesman of the group, so I think he has the potential to step up and fill that QB of the defense role, so to speak. I really think that somebody like, I think Stutzman we'll see what happens with Stutzman. I just like Stutzman a lot. Just not because he's a goofy dude, but I really do think he's got a lot of talent. And I really think that especially when you saw him last season, when he did play, you could just tell that he was obviously a younger guy, so you didn't expect him to be filled out like a senior classman or something. But at the same exact time, it's like under Schmitty, he's going to be a totally different looking dude. Like if you see pictures of him and like Ethan Downs and some of those guys, it's like, dude, they don't even look like the same human being anymore.
Right.
So I think he could. And then I don't know. After that, I don't really know. I mean, I'm gonna pull up the roster. So
while you're pulling it up, I think there are 3 guys that will factor in for sure, and it'll be interesting to see who we hear more of. Aguebu's in that bunch, Stutzman's in that bunch, and I think that Deshaun White is in that bunch. Deshaun White's a name that everybody has kind of forgotten and ridden off, but I think that this system could be great for him. I think BV's coaching could be good for him. I think my biggest thing for the linebackers is what happens in those backup roles, right? Like of Kobe McKenzie, Kip Lewis, Shane Witter.
Well, someone we haven't even brought up is Kanek.
Kanek, yes, which there could be a potential position change there with him. We'll see, but yes, those
he's
names.
still listed. He's still listed on the official roster as a linebacker. But yes, you're right.
But all those guys, who's going to really rise up and seem to be filling in that backup role? I think that will be something very interesting to watch. But I think those first 3 guys are definitely going to be the guys she like. And I mean, and the other guy that I keep forgetting to mention, and another guy that, by the way, Ted Lehman loves, so I better quit forgetting about him, is TD Roof. Teddy Lehman loves him some TD Roof. He thinks that guy can play.
And his name got brought up in one of the press conferences this week. So, I mean, and he's just, I don't think he's that physically dominant type of linebacker, but he's just the kid that he's the coach's kid. He knows football.
And that's exactly how Teddy described him. He said, man, that dude is a technician, and absolutely physical. That's the way he described him.
I could see TD Roof being the guy that when he graduates, this obviously be his last year of football playing. Unless he goes to the pros, and I honestly just don't think he's going to physically be big enough and stuff for the pros. But regardless of that, I think he's a guy that could be a GA or something, and kind of like, because he could tell he's just a student of the game. So, but yeah, I mean, and that's the thing is like our BV is just got, like I said, he's got the track record, right? Like Teddy Lehman and Rocky Kalmus are 2 of my favorite players of all time. And they both were just dominant under BV. I mean, people were scared of Teddy Lehman and Rocky Kalmus.
Yep.
So just was absolutely insane to see. And so I think some of these guys, like I said, I don't think this season Kobe McKenzie is going to be, starting per se. I think he'll get some rotation time. But it's like, dude, in his junior year or whatever, dude, I'm foaming at the mouth to see what he's going to turn into, because he's already so freaking physically dominant.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, that'll be interesting. The other position group that we're going to look at tonight is running backs. And so obviously Eric Gray's leading the way, at least coach speak wise. Eric Gray is RB1 on this squad. After that, Jared, what are you looking for out of this group? What do you want to see? And maybe even with Gray himself that you want to kind of hear or see through fall camp.
I mean, with Gray, it was just, he had such a weird season, right? And it's so hard to put, because it was just, I mean, overall it was just a weird season for the team. But it's like, how many times was that dude a shoestring tackle away from being, putting it in the house from 80, or whatever. So I want to look for him. And I think some of that is, especially early in the season, you could tell, again, to go back to the preparedness, you could tell early in the season, like he didn't really quite know where the hole was supposed to be or where he was supposed to go. Like he was having some vision problems. And I want to see that improve in his game, and I think it will. So that's for Gray. But the guy that I honestly like, so there's 2 guys that I want to highlight besides Gray. And one of them is just, it would be incredible to see if he's going to be that good, because DeMarco Murray talked this kid up, and that is Gavin Sawchuk. Supposedly the fastest kid on the team, or one of. He's the top in the top 3. And DeMarco talked about him glowingly, said he's just like me. He wants to work. He's a hard worker. He wants to learn the game. And DeMarco was known as a relentless worker and a relentless, studier and everything when he was at OU. So it will be very interesting to see him. But the other one is like, just because of the spring game, and just because honestly in the spring game, I thought he looked, strangely enough, like set apart from everybody besides Eric Gray, Tally Walker. Like in the spring game, he looked by far the best, in my opinion, outside of Gray. Yeah. And so it'll be very interesting to see if he actually, it's hard to say obviously in a spring game, but it's like, if he can put it together, then maybe we have a situation where we have somebody that just sneaks up and is that guy, I can't even remember what was the walk-on kid's name from
back in the day.
Yes, I can't think of his name now.
Yeah, he ended up breaking his ankle and like ruined his career. He transferred from Langston to OU as a walk-on. Good Lord. Somebody in the chat help us. Short, squatty little body, broke like a 60-yard touchdown against Texas that year that he was blowing up. Oh my gosh. Cannot remember his name.
I can't. Yeah, I can't.
I'll look it up in a minute. But yes, I mean, there have been guys that have done that. Yes, Dominic Whaley. Yep, that's it. Yep. Dominic Whaley.
He was working at he's a kid that I feel bad for because he could have used NIL. He was working at Subway. Yeah. Because he was a walk-on. He was still having to pay for school and stuff. And so he was working at Subway and going to school. I mean, it's like, dude, the kid just worked, so
he was a beast too.
Anyway, so we'll see if Tali wants to step up. But
yeah. Well, I think what you said is true about Sawchuk that I thought was interesting. Like in the spring, the darling of spring was Javonte Barnes, right? Mm-hmm. That name came up over and over and over and over and over again. Now, 2 months through summer workouts, it's Sawchuk with a sprinkle of Marcus Major, which, by the way, the guy who called out Marcus Major was BV himself, which I think all of us that are OU fans that have followed all this have wanted Marcus Major to show up, because with his just sheer size and speed, you just think the guy's got to be a freak, but he's just got to get his stuff together. Needless to say, I think the depth is better than I anticipated it would be at this point.
Well, and I also think with like Major, you have to look at it as in another one of those weird things that we talked about this ad nauseum last season about. They would put Major in and he would get, he was getting 8-9 yards a carry. And right. then like there was one game, like he was averaging like 9 yards a carry, was just demolishing them. And he got hit. And it was just one of those plays where like somebody's helmet hits right on the perfect spot of the ball. It's nearly impossible to hold on to the ball in that way. So he fumbles it and he gets pulled and sat the rest of the game. And it's like, I can get that logic to some degree, but it's like,
he's had some bad luck on the way, but the coaching staff has also talked about him getting his crap together. We have to remember he didn't play a lot last year because he was ineligible, right? Yeah. Like there's even the old staff, with as undisciplined as they were, talked about his lack of discipline, right? So
yeah, no, 100%.
That's been but again, with a staff that will stay on top of you and force you to be there, that could be exactly what he needs. But again, I honestly did not expect this season for Barnes and Sawchuk to have this kind of glowing praise, right? So I was really expecting that Major had to step up, and that Gray was going to have to step up for there to be even two running backs in the room. And now you feel good about Gray, you feel good about Sawchuk, you feel good about Major, you feel good about Barnes, you feel good about Tom. It's like, okay, like we are good. We're not the best running back room in the nation, but we are good. We're going to be okay throughout the year. Well, so I just want to see what happens through camp.
Yeah, it's going to be this, like you just said. This is I think there was a lot of guys like you said, Barnes and Sawchuk. I think there were guys that we knew could be superstars one day, but I think we kind of told ourselves like, well, it's going to take, typically it's going to take a year or two. Even like if you look back at some of the former greats, like even DeMarco or even Joe Mixon. Like Joe Mixon, I know obviously had his year off because of whatever. But it's like Samaje is the only, like the last guy that I can think back to that came in ready. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like that dude was a full grown man when he showed up on campus at 18 years old. And I remember calling you and being like, dude, this kid's going to be a beast right out of the gate.
Yeah,
and,
you did.
So, but anyway, I mean, but I do think some of these guys, like I said, I think that's the work ethic they're instilling in them. I would not be surprised. I don't think you're going to see Barnes or Sawchuk. They're not going to be starting, I don't think, unless something happens to Gray. But at the same time, I think you're going to see them get some carries, and I think you're going to get to see some flashes of what the future could be if they stay at OU.
Yeah, no doubt. No doubt. And then the other group, again, that I don't think that there's a ton of worry about, but I still think it's an interesting group to break down is the wide receiver room, right? And look, it all starts with Marvin Mims. We don't have to discuss that. He's great. As long as he knows the offense, Dylan Love, like he's going to be fine, right? But then after that comes the question mark. Who are going to be the guys? Can Theo Wee stay healthy? To me is the question. Drake, like, is he just continue to be the clutch guy that always comes up with what you need when you need it? But then, man, after that, what's going to happen there? So what are you looking for? Who are some names that you're watching throughout that group?
Well, let's, obviously, like you said, Mims, Drake, those are great. Theo, by the way, has added 10 pounds.
Right.
So, which is pretty impressive for a guy like him. And Swayze says Drake Stoops is Wes Welker's love child. I mean, you're not wrong. But outside of those guys, outside of Mims, Drake, and Weiss, I think that you're going to have to look at guys. I still think Farouk could have it. I mean, I know he didn't have I think he had less of a spring game than what we thought, but the kid's just got the speed and he had flashes in the bowl game. So I think he could be a guy. But I mean, yeah, like outside of that, but the thing is it's again, that gives you, you have 3 solid receivers. You're looking for your 4th and 5th options. Right. And depending on how Lebby really, how his offense is going to be, it's like, a guy like Braden Willis or somebody might end up being a guy that's, a real receiving threat. He was very underutilized in Muleshoe's offense. And now I don't think that's going to be the case. I mean, they even talked about him in the presser about how impressed they were with him. And so I think Lebby did specifically, so it's gonna be interesting. And like you said, there's guys like Nick Anderson has gotten a lot of praise, too. And I do think he could be special. I honestly like the wide receiver room, while like you said, like there's a lot of question marks after those top 3. It's like, it's more of a question of who's going to rise the most, in my opinion. It's not, we don't have anybody, we're going to struggle to find somebody. It's going to be who's going to be the top guy, who's going to be the guy that rises to the top of that heap. And there's a lot of guys that have at least the physical capability to be great.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Like you said, I have been a little shocked by how much Nick Anderson's name is coming up. So I definitely think that that's a guy to watch. Obviously, you're right. Jaleel Farouk is probably that guy that's been the most talked about as kind of that 3rd option in there. So it's kind of, Weiss, Farouk, Stoops, Mims. Then again, Nick Anderson's name keeps coming up. I'm going to give you 2 other names to watch through fall camp that I'm going to be interested to see if we hear about. And then I'm going to give you my own just personal favorite. These are kind of the dark horses. Number 1, Trayvon West. Trayvon West can flat fly. And if we know anything about Lebby, he wants to push the ball down the field. I will be very interested to see if Trayvon West can find his way into this offense. And I think as a guy whose skill set is unlike anybody else's on the roster, just because he really does have speed for days. Number 2 name to watch out for. He's been getting talked about a lot in the last week. Gavin Freeman. Gavin Freeman's a walk-on. Gavin Freeman is been praised by everybody. And if you didn't see the highlights from the All-State game that just went down like 2 or 3 weeks ago, whatever it was, that he was a part of, kid's a walk-on. He made like a over 3 defenders pull down the ball kind of deal. I mean, this is a kid that had offers from Texas Tech and some other places and chose to walk on at OU. Don't sleep on him. I think it could be really fun. My own guy that I want to hear about, because this is yet another guy that it feels like every time they put him on the field, plays were made and then he just disappeared. And that's Brian Darby. I think is another name that everybody has forgotten about. And he brings a different set too. He's 6 foot, 200 pounds. I mean, that's a load to pull down. And so I'm excited to see what he can do in this offense. Because again, when he got put on the field, plays were made, and then they just felt like they went away from him. So those are the names I'm watching in the wide receiver room. But again, I feel very good. Jaden Gibson's a name we didn't even talk about right in there. JJ Hester, the transfer. JV Bunkley, we didn't talk about transfer.
And even Swayze said in chat, Gibson will get a lot more run than I think anyone imagines.
Yeah.
And honestly, I think that's the thing. That's the other thing you're going to have to keep in mind with the Levy offense, I think he's more like, I think you're going to see a lot more rotation at receiver than you saw even under Riley, right? Because you're going to have guys that are going to, I mean, in his offense, there's going to be a lot of stretch in the field.
Yeah.
And it's like, so if a guy runs 3 deep routes, then you might pull him and let him sit for a play or two so he can get his legs back, right? You know, and so you're going to have to rotate in. And so it might be kind of a hockey lineup rotation sort of thing where you pull all your receivers and put a whole new group out. And like you said, with Levy, it's like if you look at Levy, and as much as I hate to say even the name, out of his Briles coaching tree and that Briles offense style, it's like, dude, there was so many guys. If you go back and look at those teams, there were so many guys that put up huge numbers and in that system that really weren't that great as far as a full tool guy. It was like he could just run really fast and he could catch the ball. That's it. You know, he didn't have any route running. He didn't, he couldn't really cut that well or whatever. And he wasn't going to catch the ball that was, in traffic. But it's like the dude, if you just got him down the field and got him open, he can make a play. And Levy's in that same coaching tree. Yeah. So I think there's going to be a lot of guys that are going to have an opportunity to rise to the occasion.
I agree with that. That will be a fun group to keep track on through fall camp. And we'll do our best to kind of learn some more within there. So that's kind of the OU rundown media wise, all that stuff. So let's broaden out a little bit more to general college football. Jared, Nick Saban was interviewed, asked about going into the season, and said, well, I'm pretty excited because last year was our rebuilding year.
Look, I'm going to just come out and say it. Nick Saban has become one of my favorite coaches. As much as I used to despise the guy, the fact that he just straight up threw so much shade at Texas A&M, I'm not saying that I say I'm a big fan. I'm a big fan compared to what I was. But yeah, I mean, it's just a mentality. But again, it highlights. Yes, it was technically a rebuild year for them. Like nobody expected them to go do what they did. But at the exact same time, that's his mentality, regardless, right? Like if they had won the national championship, he would still be up there saying, "No, that was a rebuild year."
Yeah,
like his standard, and that's what I do think you get some of with BV, and that's what kind of gets me all giddy, is that he's so like the standard is so high. Yeah. It doesn't matter if we won every game last season, we won national championship. This year is a new year and we're going to have to do it again. And there's no slacking on our standard. Yeah. And that's exactly how Saban is. So yeah, it was a pretty funny quote. You had, cause I mean, just if you don't know, Bama, obviously college football playoff, final, right? They ended up losing. Their quarterback won the Heisman. I think they had one of their players won. Didn't they have somebody won like the Doak Walker or something? I mean, I don't even know. Like they were littered with awards. Yeah.
And beat Georgia in the SEC championship game as well. Like pretty soundly.
So yeah, and so it's rebuild year, which Bama's going to be really good this year. So
oh my gosh,
we'll see. But
it's week 2 is going to be really fun in college football. The second thing that came out this last week was the Pac-12 had their kind of Pac-12 media days or whatever you want to call it. I don't know if I'm saying this dude's name right, and honestly, I don't care because he's not going to be a commissioner in 2 or 3 years. George Kliavkoff, I think is how you say his name, who is the commissioner of the Pac-12, responding to the statements from the Big 12 commissioner, which I've already forgotten his name now, Tor or something. But he said, hey, the Big 12 is open for business. We're going to do whatever's best for the Big 12. Kliavkoff responded with this: with respect to the Big 12 being open for business, I appreciate that, he told reporters, but we haven't decided if we're going shopping there or not yet. Like, it's pretty ballsy statement, right? Like
part of me wants to be like, I don't know if I'm just going to call him Joe Schmo unemployed because I mean, look, the Pac-12 is going to die. I'm sorry.
Yes.
Like you have to like the problem that the Pac-12 has is a problem that they've had for a better part of a decade or longer than a decade, 15 years probably since USC was relevant.
Right.
Mecca of college football. Anyway, nobody wants to watch football on the West Coast. And by the time that people give a crap about football, which is people in the Southeast and the Midwest and all that sort of area,
yeah,
it's like, I don't want to watch. I'm not going to turn on a game at 11 o'clock at night to watch two teams that suck. You know what I mean? Like there's a good chance, like unless Oregon's playing Utah, I don't care. Right. Like, because the rest of the teams are terrible. So nobody cares. So to me, it's like their only option is obviously you've already got some of those teams that are going to the Big Ten. Right. And it's like your only other option is to merge with the Big 12. And then that way, maybe you can start getting at least getting some of your games and getting your brands out in front of people on a TV audience at a reasonable time frame, at a reasonable time for most of the country to watch that's going to watch football.
Yeah. Well, and the other statement he made was that USC and UCLA made decisions that were in the short term might be beneficial to them, but in the long term, they were going to regret what. And I'm like, how are you going to regret like tripling your payout every year for your student athletes in your university? Like, I mean, granted, I still think it's hilarious that the closest game that USC and UCLA will play is like 1,700 miles away or whatever it is. I still find that hilarious, but come on, man. Like,
here's what I kind of find interesting. So one thing that we not even in our notes, and I forgot to tell you to mention this, Malachi Nelson, right? I think the Malachi Nelson thing, for people that don't know, Malachi Nelson went and took an unofficial visit to Texas A&M, which means that he had to pay his own way to go to Texas A&M and spend the weekend down there partying with everybody. And it's very interesting because there's also been rumors, nothing that's been fully substantiated, but there's been rumors that some of the guys aren't getting the NIL deals that they thought they were going to get, or they're not getting the payouts they thought they were going to get. And so it's like the only thing, like I told you this the other day, and I even said this in the Discord, the Lincoln Riley may have gone to California at the very worst time. Yeah. Like we're on the cliff of the recession. Like the recession is here. Right. We're sliding into it.
Yep.
And, California is usually the first hit and the worst hit by a recession. And so that's what I told you. I said, I think it just comes down to brass tacks of people are saying, I got to pay my mortgage rather than pay a kid $50,000 to play football. I really do think it's going to get that desperate for a lot of people out there. And that's a lot of money to dry up. Yeah. So if they don't go to a conference that's going to give them more payouts, that's going to help them be more financially viable. It's like, yeah, they're going to struggle. I mean, people, that's his sell right now. Is apparent is unless they come out and have, 3 12-win seasons or something, like he doesn't have much of a product to sell outside of, well, we can get you a bunch of NIL money.
Right.
So
yeah, it's pretty fascinating. I'm just curious where alignment's going to go from here. It feels like there's going to be a third power conference to me. And it seems like the Big 12 and the ACC are much more committed to football and to sports. So it seems like some kind of combo there, but man, I don't know how that's going to work with the Fox and the ESPN side of it and just all the different things. So it's a fascinating thing that lies ahead of us.
I honestly think that eventually the ACC is going to split up too. I think I would say probably Clemson, Florida State, Miami, and I'm trying to think who else is in the ACC or in the ACC.
North Carolina,
maybe North Carolina,
basketball standpoint.
Yeah, Duke. Maybe those 4 schools go to the SEC, right? And then the rest kind of go to the Big 12 or, whatever, some mixture of that. And I think if you do that, then it's like you'll just have 3. I think you're just going to go from Power 5 to Power 3.
Right.
So, and you're just going to have 3 super conferences. But yeah, and I don't know how that's all would shake out with having like a 45 team conference, but we'll see.
Yeah, it's gonna get wild. All that stuff is. So, anyways, all right, let's talk some NFL real quick to kind of close this out. It's official. Deshaun Watson, 6 games. Were you shocked?
A little bit, but not totally. I think, yeah, see, Freya agrees. I think that there's well, I did see today, by the way, the NFL is actually appealing the decision. I don't know if you saw that.
Yes, I did see that.
And they said that they feel he should be suspended for a minimum of 1 season.
Yeah.
And what's funny about it is the Browns fans that I've talked to that are sensible have said that they don't want him to play this season at minimum.
Yeah.
I've even seen a lot of them say I won't cheer for the Browns until he's off the roster.
Yeah.
But anyway, it's not totally surprising. But again, it's like right now it's so funny to me because I almost feel bad for the NFL, and I know that's a weird statement to make because the NFL tried to do somewhat the right thing and say, like, we're going to have a third party that's going to decide, right? And we're going to have them deem what the punishment should be. And that party came down with six weeks. And then now the NFL is getting dragged through the mud by everybody by like, well, so-and-so got suspended for 6 weeks for smoking a joint or, so-and-so, it was, who was it that got last season that got suspended for betting on his own team to win?
Yeah.
And it was like $500 or something. It wasn't, it was pennies for him. And it's just things like that. Calvin Ridley. There you go. Yeah, it's absolutely insane to see the disparity between punishments, right? Like even was it Josh Gordon or somebody got suspended for a full season for weed? It's like it's again they're falling into the same trap that the NCAA has fallen into of the disparity between punishments, right?
Right.
Like even if the circumstances are the exact same, the NCAA has been known to punish one person more than they punished another. Yeah. Instead of just saying like your sentence is this. And to me, there's no way Deshaun should get any more than a season suspension. Any less than that, I think is a travesty. He should definitely get more than that, but I think anything less than a full season is a joke.
Yeah. I agree with you. This is where we've talked about some of this with some of the other issues in sports. There's a difference between what is right and what is legal. And that sounds dumb to say, but it just is. And unfortunately, the reality is Deshaun Watson never forced himself on a woman. He never
supposedly
supposedly never touched them, more or less. Like, unfortunately, he's like touching himself and exposing himself, right, to these. But that's why, if you notice, his lawyers just kept saying over and over again, there was nothing hostile. There was nothing violent or hostile. There was nothing hostile, nothing but like at the end of the day, he is gross from a legal standpoint. He is gross. He has no awareness of social cues or how anything should work socially. A pervert. You can use a lot of language, right? It's the weird thing. If you haven't seen the Netflix documentary Our Father yet, it's very similar, right? What he did is completely immoral and wrong. From a legal standpoint, he did nothing wrong. And so if you haven't seen this documentary, it's about people going through fertility treatments, and this man was using his own semen to help these women get pregnant. And he has like, what did they figure out? Like it's like 35 kids now or something like that. And you're never supposed to have more than like 2, but he wasn't telling these people that that's what he was doing. And from a legal standpoint, they can like basically not do anything to him because from a legal standpoint, didn't do anything wrong. But we would all agree, like, what are you doing? Like, no, like that's wrong. And that's where Deshaun is. And unfortunately, that's where the federal judge is. From a legal standpoint, yeah, it makes you guys look bad, but he didn't break the law. So,
I think it's going to have to come down to, again, this is where I think the NFL does deserve the heat, is because it's like, we've been through this before. to some degree. We had the Ezekiel Elliott situation, right? Where literally everyone, it wasn't just one judge, it was everyone, the police, the independent investigator, the person that tried to, that was trying to give a ruling said he shouldn't be suspended. It was all fabricated. The woman confessed to fabricating the whole story.
Mhm.
And he still was suspended because the NFL basically just said, we have the right to suspend you.
Yeah.
So to me at this point is that if the NFL doesn't do that to Deshaun Watson, it's like, dude, you're a joke. Like, you're already a joke, but it's like,
but the problem is the collective bargaining agreement is different.
Oh,
right?
yeah,
Like,
I know.
that. I mean, so to be fair to the NFL, that was in the days when Roger Goodell had all power and all authority to do whatever he wanted. And now they've taken that from him.
Ironically, the Ezekiel Elliott is a big reason as to why that probably got put in the CBA.
Yes, 100%. So,
but yeah, I mean, it's, again, we'll see what happens. Like you said, legal and right are two they're two different things.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, I'm not real confident this is going to end, but I was like, dude, the one thing maybe I can hold on to, this isn't a great consolation prize, but it's something is like, dude, he is going to get the Browns as a whole are going to get booed everywhere they go.
Yeah. I mean, it's going to look bad. And look, I want to make sure to keep bringing this up. To me, one of the grossest things in this whole deal is not even Deshaun Watson, right? It's the Texans setting these meetings up, giving him non-disclosure agreements, like basically knowing that this guy was doing creepy stuff and just trying to cover it, right? And then the Browns, who structured a contract because they knew he did wrong things and that he was going to get suspended lengthily. So they set his contract up to make sure he could make the most money. Like that, those are some things that are almost as gross, right? Like, hey, we know you did some really inappropriate things. So let us set your contract up so that when you do get punished, you really don't get punished. I think,
and luckily though, the Browns figured they've said we put in an exit clause. If he gets more than 50 allegations, then,
yeah,
it's such a joke. It's such a joke of a franchise right now, to be honest.
It's a sad deal. Other NFL news, Baker Mayfield seems to be making a push in Carolina.
Yeah, it was really interesting because I saw a report that the first day Sam Darnold was actually running with the ones most of the day, and Baker was running with the twos most of the day. They obviously rotated back and forth with that a little bit. But yeah, I mean, when you watch the films that are coming out, it's like, don't see a whole lot of Sam Darnold highlights. Baker seems like he's going to have the job locked up, and it's the other thing is that I've noticed is that the few interviews that I've seen or quotes that I've seen, like, of the players there are already raving about him.
Yeah.
So I'm glad. I'm Carolina, baby. I'm a lifetime Carolina Panthers fan now. So.
Well, like I said, I just want him to get a shot, man. I want him to stay healthy. And like I've said all along, I don't think Baker is a top 5 quarterback in this league and probably not even top 10. But, man, if he can hover in that 10 to 15 range, I think Carolina can do really well, and he can have a good career in the NFL. And I want that for him, man. He's battled so much. I just want him to have a good career.
Well, I think with Baker, it's hard to quantify him in this traditional sense. It's like, no, he doesn't have the top 10 arm talent. He doesn't have top 10 accuracy or whatever, but it's like, I think it's just the intangibles that he brings to the table are what makes a case for him to be at least fringe top 10 quarterback in the league.
Yeah.
So
for sure. And then within the NFL news, wanted to keep it Oklahoma centric. Malcolm Rodriguez, man. Woo! I said all last draft, and I know this is a Sooner centric podcast, but I kept saying, I believe that the best defensive player, at least from our neck of the woods in the entire draft, was Malcolm Rodriguez. Like I don't understand and like I said before too, before the combine, my only knock on him was I thought he was slow. And then he went to the combine, he dropped a 4.4. And it was like, oh, like questions over. The dude tackles everything. He reads everything. Like, there's nothing about this game not to like. And sure enough, they put him in the other day in practice, and there was a video going around about it. I retweeted it, I believe, from our Just Okay account, so you can check that. He sniffs it out and hits it, and then he got asked specifically about Malcolm Rodriguez, the head coach there at Detroit. And he said, man, he's a guy that we decided we needed to bump him up and give him more. And what does he do? He goes out and he goes, and like I've said all along, when we put pads on, that's when people separate, and he's separating. And he even said that his mental ability to see and recognize is way, way, way ahead and is really, really good. Look, my friend John is a huge Cowboys fan. He still says I'm nuts. I still believe that Malcolm Rodriguez is Luke Kuechly 2.0. Like that's who I have seen in his game since day one that he kind of took over at OSU. And man, like, again, I know we don't talk a ton of Cowboy stuff on here, but I am thrilled for him and want him to blow it up in Detroit.
Well, I mean, this is what's funny to me. Because you say that, and it's always cracked me up because, like, I know so many OSU fans, and they just hate OU. They don't want an OU player to succeed. They still hate Baker. They still hate Kyler. They still hate Jalen. They still hate whoever, right? I remember seeing some of them drag Joe Mixon and Samaje on, Twitter whenever they were in the Super Bowl. It's like, dude, I don't really care for, like, OSU. I'm not a fan, clearly, but I'm happy for Malcolm Rodriguez. Like, that's awesome. Like, it's kind of that state pride thing of, I want him to succeed. I want OSU to be, I want OSU to win every game except when they play OU.
100%. Yep. 100%.
And I want them to have success. And like I said, I agree with you. I don't know if I would go as far to say Luke Kuechly 2.0, but I mean, he's pretty stinking good. And the bad thing for him, he's playing for the Lions. So
yes,
well,
the good and the bad, right? The bad is obviously it's not a great organization. The good is he's going to get opportunity. And if he goes in there and makes plays week in and week out, he's going to get an opportunity in 3 or 4 years to get a new contract at a new place and to go set himself on fire. And he's just got to go take advantage of it. So anyways, I saw that. I'm following him again. I was a fan of his game at Oklahoma State. I hated playing him. I wanted him to not be healthy when we played them because he was a game changer on the defensive side. So I hope he does really well. So anyways, that's all I got. Anything else you got?
That's it for this week. I mean, we've gone pretty long, so
yeah,
I'll save all the stuff I got for next week.
Fair enough. Hey, don't forget to hit the merch store, redbubble.com, Just Okay Sports. Find us over there. Buy a little bit of merch. Help support this place. Don't forget to subscribe, and also don't forget to leave a 5-star review. It helps us tremendously, so please do those things. We are having a great time. We hope you are too. I'm Daryl.
I'm J-Rod.
And we will talk to you guys later. Bye, Baker.
Cha-ching, it's under money ball. And you can hit the wagon. Put the ponies in the ball.